Alright, this is Weaponized Reacts and we're back with another video, and this is going to be a review of The Lighthouse, which is a film directed by Robert Eggers, and to me, this is honestly one of the most disturbing movies that I have ever seen in my life, as it was just so well acted and directed. And not just that, but this is a film that I totally recommend that you should go check out once in your life, as it is going to be an experience that you will never forget. But I will warn you that it can get pretty hard to watch at times. But still, this is an amazing film that deserves a lot more attention, especially nowadays. And I'm just gonna let you know that there will be a lot of spoilers in this review. I'm going to break down the plot of this film. So, in a remote island, Ephraim Winslow arrives as a lighthouse keeper and assists his supervisor, Thomas Wake. As days passed, he is haunted by strange and mysterious visions. If there was one thing that I really liked about this film, is the way in how it does such an amazing job at telling a story that is deeply compelling. And while it may look simple at times, this is a very well written and complex movie that will stay with you long after it's over. And to me, one of the most interesting things about this film is the fact that it is so much more than just a horror movie, but a powerful study on the dark side of isolation as a whole. And not just that, but I thought some of the acting performances was just so well done, especially from Robert Pattinson as Thomas Howard, also known as Ephraim Winslow. And to me, this is honestly one of his best performances, as he does such an amazing job at portraying his character as someone who is deeply flawed, but just so well written all at the same time. And when we first see his character in the opening scene of the film, it immediately starts off with Thomas Howard and Thomas Wake traveling on top of a large steamboat in the darkness. But when the other crew members are trying to unload the supplies onto the island, it quickly transitions into a shot of them being left all alone at the lighthouse as they settle themselves in. And this is where you start to realize that this is a man who is deeply consumed by his own insecurities within himself. And to me, I thought that this was a perfect introduction into who he really is as a person. And not just that, but it perfectly sets up everything for the film that you are about to see. And I am not gonna lie to you right now, out of all of the films that I have ever seen in my life, no movie shows a more realistic depiction of the horrors of isolation better than this film right here. And you can really see that from his character arc throughout the movie. One of the most interesting things about him as a character is the way in how he tries to cope with the guilt he feels after killing the real Ephraim Winslow. And while he knows that he is completely unable to escape from his own personal hell, you can really see that he is trying to do everything that he can in order to become a better person through the journey that he goes on throughout the film. And not just that, but the film implies that he is a physical representation of Prometheus. And to me, it is just honestly one of the main reasons on why he is such a well written and deeply complex character. And you can really see that from Robert Pattinson's powerful performance in this movie. And I am not gonna lie to you right now, he deserves a lot of praise for his performance in this film right here, as it was just so fucking good. And not just that, but this is a pretty realistic depiction of a man who is deeply consumed by his own guilt for what he did, and is now a deeply insecure man who is trapped by his own environment. But as the film goes on, he slowly loses his sense of reality. And it is honestly one of the main reasons on why this is honestly one of the most well written horror films that has ever been made. Because it shows what isolation and loneliness does to people who are insane. And if there was one thing that I really liked about Robert Pattinson's performance, is the way in how he brought so much depth and humanity into his character. As it really goes to show you that he can do such an amazing job at playing characters who are deeply complex. And you can really see that from this film right here, as it was just so fucking haunting in a way. And overall, Thomas Howard is such a well written and deeply complex character, and Robert Pattinson honestly makes his film so much better than it already is, as he is honestly one of the greatest actors working right now. And I am not gonna lie to you right now, this is definitely up there as being one of the most haunting performances in the history of cinema. I thought Willem Dafoe did such an amazing job playing Thomas Wake, despite the fact that he wasn't in the film all that much. And to me, one of the most interesting things about him as a character is the way in how he's portrayed as being an old lighthouse keeper who will do whatever it takes in order to push Thomas Howard beyond his breaking point. And I just want to say that his monologues throughout the film was just so well done, as they really add a lot to the disturbing nature of his character in a way. But if there was one thing that I really liked about his performance, is the way in how he brought so much depth and complexity into the role, as it really makes Thomas Wake so much more than just a side character, but someone who is actually terrifying. And overall, this is honestly one of his best performances, if not his best performance in his entire career. As it really goes to show you that he can do such an amazing job at playing characters who are deeply complex. And I am actually going to be honest right now, out of all of the films that I have seen from Willem Dafoe, this is definitely up there as being one of the most terrifying performances in the history of cinema. And the fact that he didn't win an Oscar for this is a perfect example on why the Oscars don't fucking matter. And it wasn't just him and Robert Pattinson that gave great performances, but I thought the supporting cast also did a pretty great job playing the characters, even if they weren't in the film all that much. And I am not gonna lie to you right now, this is honestly some of the best acting that I have ever seen from a film like this. I thought Robert Eggers' direction of the film was just so well done, as it really goes to show you that he is honestly one of the greatest directors working in Hollywood today. And you can really see that from the way and how he does such an amazing job at telling a deeply compelling story about the dark side of isolation and the decay of humanity as a whole. And not just that, but it is honestly one of the main reasons on why he is just the absolute best, especially when it comes to directing period horror films that will stay with you long after it's over. And I am not gonna lie to you right now, we need more movies just like this, especially when we are living in a time of where every film that comes out nowadays is nothing more but generic and soulless slop that nobody asked for. Also, do you want to know what's the biggest problem affecting Hollywood right now? Is the fact that they are hiring writers who don't give a fuck about telling a good story, but more about pushing their own agenda onto you. And do you want to know why we go to cinemas in the first place? Is to just be entertained. It's just that fucking simple. And if Hollywood can't realize that, then just look at the fact that every film that is coming out nowadays is bombing at the box office. And while there were some absolute masterpieces that came out this year, it doesn't excuse the fact that there is just no saving Hollywood right now, as they did this to themselves, and you know what? They fucking deserve it. And I am not gonna lie to you right now, Robert Eggers deserves a lot of praise for his direction of this film right here, as he made a haunting masterpiece that will stick with you long after it's over. And it really shows that he is honestly one of the best directors making horror films right now, as he makes films that are genuinely terrifying. And I am excited to watch his new horror film, Werewolf, that is coming out later this year. And I totally recommend that you should go check out some of his other films, like this film, The Vivitch, Nosferatu, and The Northman, as they are both absolute masterpieces that we just don't get from modern Hollywood anymore. The black and white cinematography is honestly one of the main reasons on why this film is just so fucking good, as it does such an amazing job at making every scene feel surrealistic but disturbing all at the same time. And you can really see that from the film's use of dark lighting and color, which I thought was just so well done. And it fits perfectly with the film's themes of claustrophobic isolation and mental degradation as a whole. And overall, this is honestly some of the best cinematography that I have ever seen in a modern film like this, as it fits perfectly with everything that this whole movie is about. And I am just gonna let you know that this is the same cinematographer who worked with Robert Eggers on a lot of his films. And to me, this is honestly his best work, as it makes this film so much better than it already is. And this goes the same way, especially when you look at the fact that this whole film was nominated for Best Cinematography at the Oscars, and you know what? It fucking deserves that, because every frame in this movie is just so well shot. And you can really thank Jaron Blaschke for what he did with this film right here, as he proved that he is a great cinematographer and is definitely up there with Roger Deakins as one of the greatest cinematographers in the history of cinema. I thought the symbolism of the lighthouse in this movie is honestly one of the main reasons on why this film is just an absolute masterpiece of cinema, as it's all done to reflect the mental states of the two main characters and their isolation throughout the film. And it makes me realize that this is just one of those horror films that will stay with you long after you've first seen it. And trust me, you do not want to miss this movie. I thought the character of the mermaid was just so fucking terrifying, but just so well written all at the same time. And to me, one of the most interesting things about her as a character is the way in how she is portrayed as being a psychological manifestation of Thomas Howard's guilt and frustrations within himself. And not just that, but I thought the actress did a pretty great job playing the character, as she brought so much depth and complexity into the role, and it really makes her character so terrifying in a way. And it really goes to show you that she is honestly one of the most underrated actors working in Hollywood right now. And this film is a perfect example of that. I thought the Sea Curse monologue scene is honestly one of the most disturbing scenes that I have ever seen in a film like this, as it fits perfectly with everything that this whole movie is about. So the scene immediately starts off with Thomas Howard and Thomas Wake getting drunk at the lighthouse. But when they get into an argument with each other about his food, it quickly transitions into a shot of Thomas Wake deciding to curse Thomas Howard with a monologue about the ocean and what's going to happen in the future. As the scene ends with Thomas Howard saying that he likes his cooking. And if there was one thing that I really liked about this scene, is the way and how it does such an amazing job at showing you that the isolation from the two main characters is slowly tearing them apart from the inside out. And not just that, but I thought the acting from Willem Dafoe in the scene is honestly some of the most powerful acting that I have ever seen in a film like this, as it makes the scene hit so much harder than it already is. And it is honestly one of the main reasons on why Thomas Wake is such a terrifying character. I thought Logan Hawkes did a pretty good job playing Ephraim Winslow, despite the fact that he was only in the film for a couple of scenes. And to me, one of the most interesting things about him as a character is the way and how he's portrayed as being a sailor who was murdered by Thomas Howard and is now a dead man walking. And if there was one thing that I really liked about Logan Hawke's performance, is the way in how he brought so much depth into the role, as it really made him so much more than just a side character, but someone who was deeply compelling but just so terrifying all at the same time. And you can really see that from the scene of where Thomas Howard discovers his dead body floating in the water and the hallucinations that he experiences throughout the movie. And overall, this is honestly one of Logan Hawke's best performances, as it really goes to show you that he can do such an amazing job at playing characters who are deeply complex but just so thought-provoking, all at the same time. And this film is a perfect fucking example of that. One of the most interesting things about this film is the way and how it does such an amazing job at showing how isolation can slowly destroy a person's life from the inside out. And you can really see that from the two main characters throughout the film, as they spend their whole lives in the lighthouse being deeply consumed by their own environment, only to end up being insane and losing themselves completely. And what makes this film even more terrifying is the fact that this is a modern interpretation of Prometheus and what happened to him when he betrayed the gods. And to me, it is just honestly one of the main reasons on why this film will be remembered as being a haunting masterpiece that will stay with you long after it's over. This is a very good film. as it's so fucking haunting, but just so well written all at the same time. Like everything from the acting to the directing to the writing was just so well done. You're not gonna get another horror film like this ever again. Because when I first saw this film in 2024, it was so fucking disturbing, but just so well made. And that says a lot for an A24 movie. I thought the scene on where Thomas Howard has a mental breakdown while having hallucinations is honestly one of the most emotionally powerful and disturbing scenes that I have ever seen in a film like this, as it really adds a lot to the film's themes and its story. So the scene immediately starts off with a montage of Thomas Howard having hallucinations about the mermaid. But when he grabs the figurine, it quickly transitions into a shot of him crying while having a mental breakdown and jerking off with the mermaid. And I just want to say that the acting from Robert Pattinson in this scene is honestly some of the most powerful acting that I have ever seen in a film like this, as you can really feel his pain and sexual insecurities within himself. And the fact that he hasn't won an Oscar for his performance in this movie is a perfect example on why the Oscars are just so fucking irrelevant. Because if you look at the films that won Best Picture, do you really think that they'll be remembered for a long time? No, they fucking won't. Just look at the most recent example, One Battle After Another. Do you remember that fucking thing? Like, even though it was an okay film, it did not deserve Best Picture. Or Sinners, too. Like, I don't fucking remember that film at all. And I loved it. That's the problem. These films are forgettable. But if you look at movies like The Godfather or anything else from the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, they're classics. They're masterpieces. Well, the films we get today are just slop made for streaming services, and it's one of the main reasons on why Hollywood is just so fucking dead. Because they make films that nobody asked for. And I am not gonna lie to you right now. This is a pretty realistic depiction of a man finally coming to terms with himself and the dark side of his own reality. And it is honestly one of the main reasons on why The Lighthouse is just so fucking terrifying and disturbing as a movie. And if there was one thing that I didn't like about this film, is the fact that it can get pretty slow and boring at times. But still, it works perfectly with everything that this whole movie is about, especially when you realize that the pacing is all done to reflect their dehumanization throughout the film. And it really goes to show you that this is honestly one of the most compelling stories that you are ever going to get from a film like this. And I just want to say that the sound design was just so well done, as it pulls you into this environment and the main character's isolation and their dehumanization throughout the film. Like, really, you can hear everything. You can hear the lighthouse, you can hear the oceans and all that kind of stuff. and it works perfectly with what the film is trying to say. Like, really, it makes this film deeply atmospheric and powerful. Like, really. This film would have not have worked if it wasn't for Robert Eggers' direction, Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson's performances, all the cinematography, because they honestly made this film so much better than it already is. And if you want a film with good writing and good directing and good storytelling, then go watch this film, because it will stay with you long after it's over, and it's going to be an experience that you will never forget, because it is deeply disturbing and powerful. Like, really, out of all the horror films that I have seen in my life, this is definitely up there as being one of the best ones, because it shows that Robert Eggers is really good with horror and building atmosphere in his movies, because the atmosphere in this film is just something else. This is the rating that this film got on Rotten Tomatoes, so 90% from the critics and 72% from the audience, and I am going to read out the reviews right now. So for the first review, shot in black and white, 35mm film, Robert Eggers' first feature, never loses its vibrant yet mysterious atmosphere. For the second one, a stone cold masterpiece. For the third one, this psychological horror drama is jammed with nightmarish imagery and tour de force acting performances. For the fourth one, easily one of 2019's most unique, original, and rewarding motion pictures. For the fifth review, it's a bleak and mind-bending trip to the edges of insanity, wrapped in a sobering study of the effects of isolation. And I'm not gonna lie to you right now, this film reminded me a lot of The Shining in a way, as they are both horror films that rely on atmosphere instead of jump scares, and it shows how a man changes from being a normal person to becoming insane. Like, really. We need more horror films just like this, because every film is just so fucking stupid nowadays, man. And that is something that I most definitely agree with, and as I read these reviews, it's nice seeing a film like this getting the praise that it deserves, because unlike most horror movies, it relies a lot more on atmosphere instead of cheap jump scares, because while jump scares can be used well, it's just so overused to the point of where it's just fucking stupid at this point. Just look at The Conjuring, for example, as while it is a very scary film, the jump scares are so overused. It's boring. We need more horror films like this, because this feels like you're on a trip. And to me, it is just honestly one of the main reasons on why this film is just so fucking disturbing. And while it may look uncomfortable at times, it is still a whole lot better than the woke dog shit that we get from modern Hollywood, especially nowadays. And also, I thought the soundtrack in this movie was just so well done, as it makes every scene hit so much harder than it already is, and it fits perfectly with the film's haunting atmosphere and its themes, and I'm gonna show you an example of it right now. Trailer. I'll show you that soon, right? I'm sorry, I just showed you the trailer. That's what I'm gonna show you later on, alright? This movie was fucked up, but I loved it. Like, every scene is creepy. Every scene just works. There's not one scene in this movie that feels wasted. You could tell that this was made by a filmmaker that actually gives a shit about the films that he wants to make. Robert Eggers is like one of the best horror directors working right now, because he takes gothic elements and period elements and makes them terrifying. Just look at what he did with this film. That is basically a modern interpretation of Prometheus. And if you haven't heard about Prometheus, you'll see when you watch the film, they share a lot of similarities. Like how they both want to chase a light. But when they get to that light, they die. And you can see it in the ending later on. And also, it wasn't just Robert Pattinson that did a good job with his performance, but Willem Dafoe. Dude, that guy is a great actor, and this film shows that. His performance was terrifying. Like, really, back then when I was like into Marvel movies, I thought he was really good as the Green Goblin. But when I saw this film, I actually realized that this is one of his best performances. This shows that he is a great actor who Hollywood just doesn't give a fuck about anymore because he is so underrated, and I really love that he is getting a lot more acclaim now. I am going to explain the ending of this film. So, after killing Thomas Wake, the scene immediately starts off with Thomas Howard going into the lighthouse. But when he finally decides to look into the light and be affected by its power, the scene ends with a shot of him getting his legs and lungs torn out by seagulls. And it is very disturbing. And to me, I thought that this was a perfect ending to a film like this, as it really goes to show you that he's finally realizing that he will never escape from his own personal hell. And it also shares a lot of similarities to Prometheus. And I'm not gonna lie to you right now, it is just honestly one of the main reasons on why this film is most definitely worth your time. I'm gonna show you the trailers of this film, starting with the first one. Robert Eggers is an amazing filmmaker, and this film proves that, man. Like, look at that shot. It's so good. This is some of the best cinematography that I've ever seen in a film like this, because while I think that Roger Deakins deserved to win Best Cinematography for 1917, this is pretty good cinematography. You have to admit that. Just look at the black and white colors. I like A24. Very good studio. Like, I don't give a fuck if they're using AI in their films. Like, even though AI has no place, I still like A24 and the movies they make. Still do. Yeah, you know what kills cinema? AI and Hollywood and wokeness too. There is so much symbolism in this movie. Haunting masterpiece. In conclusion, this film was just an absolute masterpiece of horror cinema, as it does such an amazing job at showing the dark side of isolation and the dehumanization of human nature as a whole. And to me, it makes me realize that we just don't get movies like this anymore. Especially when you realize that every film that comes out nowadays is nothing more but generic and soulless slop that nobody asked for. And it really goes to show you that Hollywood is fucking dead. And there is no saving it. And if there's anything else that I want to say about this film, is go fucking watch it. As it's just an absolute masterpiece when it comes to the direction, the acting, the writing, and symbolism. And you can really tell that this was made by a filmmaker who actually gave a fuck about the film that he wanted to make. And he did it perfectly in ways that most filmmakers never even try to do. And it really goes to show you that he is a master when it comes to horror films. And this film is a perfect fucking example on why that is. As it was just so fucking haunting. And I'm just gonna let you know that the next films that I'm gonna be reviewing is Obsession, directed by Curry Barker, and Gladiator, directed by Ridley Scott. So go get ready for those. And also, anyway, that's all I got for today. Go away now, and always remember, strike back like a weapon against wokeness. And always remember, keep supporting films like this, because we need them now more than ever before, especially when we are living in an age of slop made for streaming services, franchises, reboots, remakes. We don't fucking need them. We need films made by artists, made by filmmakers who actually care about the stories that they want to tell. And that is what Robert Eggers did such a great job at showing through this film right here. Trust me, man, you do not want to miss out on this film, because out of all the horror films I've seen, this will stay with me long after it's over, because it shows the dark side of isolation. And you can see that from how the two main characters slowly lose their sanity and go insane. Like, really. No film will ever stand against this masterpiece of filmmaking, because this is great filmmaking right here. And trust me, it is worth every minute of your time and money too. So yeah, see you in the next one.